Hello and welcome to the first episode of International Insights. My name is Herman and I am a software engineer. I've currently taken a position that requires me to travel a lot, to Canada, to Brazil, and all around the US. And I would like to broaden my travels to include Asia. And the first one on my list is technically Japan. But I also want to go visit China. And with us, we have our Chinese expert, Sean.
Thank you, Herman. As he said, my name is Sean Severson, and I am currently an international and graduate admissions counselor or student advisor, where I am helping international students apply and enroll in U.S. programs, and also domestic graduate students enroll in programs that they wish to pursue. But I wanted to start this thing today because me and Alex were talking about what we've been doing the last few years and what we can do and share some ideas. Because, as he said, I have lived in China for 4 years. I only recently have returned to take this position here in the United States. And in those 4 years, I have studied, I have traveled, I have learned Chinese, and I have worked in some limited capacities. But besides things that I did, I have come away from my time in China with so many new experiences, ideas, and viewpoints on things that people in China and my experience there have reshaped many of my understandings on things. And I feel that it'd be a great thing for me and Herman here to share our experiences and inform people who wish to travel and give them good information and tips for when they do travel.
So, first of all, how does it feel coming back, this culture shock of coming back from like China, being there 4 or 5 years to now, like settling back into like some of the habits?
I would say that, for a lot of people, they may think the transition may be quite difficult. But I would say for me, the transition has not been that difficult, although there are days where you're a little confused or you're so used to doing one thing, and then here you can't do that. For example, one of the first things I did when I came back was I still had Chinese money in my wallet, and I went to pay for something. And I took out a Chinese bill, and the person looked at me like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh," because I'm so used to the currency there now. Because the entire time I've been there, they don't take U.S. dollars over there, so I've just been used to using the local currency. So it's become my unit of payment because that's all you use over there. So while the dollars is our currency because it's the United States, when you're in a country for a long time, that becomes your just your mode of operation because that's what you have to use. So you start thinking in their denomination. You start thinking in how they break down their currency. Or another example would be there are some days where I'm thinking, where is everybody? Because population over there is so much larger than it is here, or just a wide range of factors come into play. Population, food. There are just many things you get used to when you come back. It is kind of like, oh yeah, I'm back here now. And you have to kind of take a mental reset.
Yeah. No, China is mostly a cash-based society, right? Like a country, right? Like there's not
for the most part.
For the most part.
But that is changing. Especially in the city I was at. It's called Hangzhou. It's about 2.5, 3 hours southwest of Shanghai, and it's the headquarters of Alibaba Corporation. So they are using a lot more e-commerce and online pay platforms now. So when I first got there, cash was common back in 2014, but now almost everybody, all they use is Alibaba's pay platform called AliPay, or in Chinese, Jifubao. And so literally, I have it, and I have money in it as well. So pretty much 90% of my purchases now over there are through AliPay. So while I still carry cash, it's mainly an online pay platform that people use because it's so convenient. And the app, beyond simple transactions, you can invest, you can open CDs, you can pay your bills, you can order taxis, you can order food. It's extremely comprehensive. It's much more comprehensive than I would say any pay platform we have in the United States. Google Pay, Apple Pay are good, but they don't have the comprehensive uses that you see in China, at least from my experience.
Yeah, no, definitely something that's growing in the industry right now. Just not in the industry necessarily. Just I deal with these Google Pay platforms on a day-to-day, but something that's growing now is these cashless stores, you know, and we're trying to transition more into a electronic form of payment. So the fact that a city like Hangzhou in China has progressed to that point is actually quite impressive.
And it's progressed extremely rapidly. That is one thing from living in China you find is that when things are unfolding, they tend to happen much more rapidly and comprehensively because of the way the system works over there. Here, there's a lot more factors that have to be taken into consideration here because of our style of government and just our society. Whereas over there, because they're a one-party system, they are when they do something, they do it. There's no roadblocks, no extra legislation. So when they do something, it happens very quickly. Mm-hmm. So you will see things progress and move much more quickly. But I would say you don't have the same comprehensiveness as you do here. I may be mistaken, but this is just from my personal observation.
No, definitely things, such things in the financial districts, you know, these things move at a very slow pace. And of course, everybody has to be kind of heard in a country like the U.S., you know. But I want to be there in the day in which, like, I can go to any store and just use my GPay. It's such a convenient thing to have, and the fact that I have to swipe and I have to like carry this cash always with me. And I mean, mostly it's just credit cards, but still, there is still the need for like cash. It is something that I kind of admire in their development.
You know, and I would second that. You know, maybe I'm a little more old-fashioned too, but I like the idea of cash because, you know, cash is cash, but it's also symbolic, and there's a cultural and social attachment to it. You can look at a piece of currency and you can learn a lot about the country, the people, because why does currency have so many features to it? Because it's one of the most commonly used commodities among the population. Mm-hmm. So it's naturally going to at least have some features that represent that place, those people, and that country. So while I really enjoy these online pay platforms and these, you know, more readily available pay platforms because of the extreme convenience they offer, I don't think cash will ever disappear entirely. I think it may take a second seat to these new technologies and new pay platforms, but it will never disappear because cash is tangible. You know, it's if there's a crisis, if something gets hacked, you know, you can lose your money. But if you have cash in your hand, it's not going anywhere. And also, from my experience, when you scan something to buy it, there's not that mental hit of I'm losing money. But when you hand that bill over to that cashier, you can feel, I just, you know, it's like there's that like, I just lost $10, I just lost $20. But I find that with even debit cards or these pay platforms, they just scan it or swipe it. There's not that hit. Mm. And I think that causes a lot of problems for people because they don't realize how much they're spending because it's not registering. So personally, I use a lot of cash, but I mean, I use my debit card a lot, but I try to use more cash because it just, for me, kind of validates how much I'm really spending.
Mm. No, yeah, the abstraction of like the physical cash does kind of make you blind to what's actually in your bank account. I personally check mine like almost every single time I make like a somewhat big transaction.
Likewise, I probably check my online banking almost every day.
Yeah. So actually, speaking of like when you're going into these restaurants, right, and you're actually giving your card or giving your cash. So a lot of things that I've seen while traveling to other countries is that you don't have to go up to the store or give your card to the waiter anymore. They actually come by with you with a little handheld card reader for you. Do you guys have that in China?
Oh yes. I mean, I've gone to a lot of different restaurants, from the mom and pops, stores on the street, up until the more formal and fancy restaurants. And what they'll have is they'll have a QR code for AliPay or WeChat. WeChat is the Chinese equivalent of Facebook and Twitter put together. And they have these QR codes, and literally you can, after you eat, you ask the owner how much is it, you scan that, and you send that money via the AliPay or the WeChat Pay, and you pay for it, you leave. Or if you have a card, you can, if it's a small store, you may still have to go up to the person and they'll ring it. But almost everybody now will scan it,
Scan the QR,
and send the money and then leave. And also what they can do is, the apps have features where if you have many people, it will calculate how much each person pays. So it's actually quite nice if you want to go Dutch.
Oh, yeah.
But now if you go up to the higher end restaurants or mid-level restaurants, yes, all the time they'll have those card readers. But also they'll have for AliPay where you pull up your QR code and they'll scan you and it takes the money like that.
Oh, dang. They
So
reversed it on you.
They reversed it, yes. But you can do that, or you can go up to the counter and then they'll use the same thing and scan it, or they'll run your card.
Yeah. That's just an awesome convenience. I don't know of any restaurant in the U.S. that can do that right now. And I kind of like it. Because, like, I actually do want to see somebody actually, like, swipe the machine on me. I always get this, like, little paranoia. Anytime that I give my... It's subconscious, of course, but every time I hand my card, it's like, what is this person doing with my card?
Especially if you can't see them run the card,
Yeah.
because identity theft is a problem, fraud is a problem. So whenever your card is out of your sight and you don't know what the person's really doing, that's going to cause anxiety for anybody. But no, that's a very interesting thing that I've come to enjoy, because it's so easy to pay, because you either have to scan them, they scan your phone, and you're done. It automatically subtracts the amount, and if you're splitting it, it's very easy to split. It calculates it for you, and each person just sends their share. And literally what you can do is they can break the bill apart, and they just scan each person's phone, and they'll get the amount from each person.
Oh, nice.
Or something along those lines. It really just depends on how the restaurant, what they have. Do they have the readers? Do you do it together? It just depends on how many people you have, the restaurant, and what pay platform you are using. But from my experiences, when I first got there, I mainly used cash, because I didn't have AliPay, I didn't have any of this stuff, I didn't know about it at the time. So I used my debit card, and I used cash. And then later on, I got AliPay. You can choose between AliPay and WeChat. Most people have both. I like AliPay a little better over WeChat. WeChat I just use for messaging, but AliPay is the one app I use the most. And progressively over the time I've been there, I've gone from cash and debit to almost all AliPay.
So speaking of cash, so what is the denominations of in China? Is like I understand that they're bigger per bill, right? So like it's not the 120. With like 50 and then 100. I think that's what we have.
The denominations are almost the same in the U.S., but unlike the U.S. dollar, which is the same size and same color pattern with different symbols, each one of their bills can be a different color and a different size. So you go from the 1 RMB bill to the 100. With each increase in value, the size of the bill increases. And the money is broken down into units. The first you have is fen, mao, and then you have yuan, or what you hear on the street, kwai. So 10 fen is 1 mao, 10 mao is 1 RMB or 1 kwai. And then the bills are 1, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, the same as the U.S.
Okay.
And then the change, you have 1 mao, 5 mao, and 1 fen, 5 fen. So they don't have like penny, they mainly have 4 different kinds of, one like 10 mao, 50 mao, which is 10 cents, 50 cents. 1 fen or 10 fen, 50 fen.
All right.
So basically, 1 to 100 fen is 1 mao. 1 to 100 is 1 yuan, and then just like that. So they don't have as many coins as we do.
So what is like the most used bill? Like I know like and when I every single time I go to a bank, every time that I withdraw money, they always give me 20. So that's like
Yes.
the 20 is the bill that they always give me, and that's the one that I use the most, just because that's what my bank gives me. Like What is the bill that you think you would use like on a very regular day to day?
Every bank I've gone to, the ATMs only distribute 100s. You cannot get anything else from the ATMs. They will always distribute a 100 RMB bill, nothing less. If you go into the bank during business hours, you can get others. But every time I take money, it's always in hundreds. And then what I'll do is then the problem is even 100 RMB is like right now about 14.50 US. So, but over there, if you are on campus or if you can survive a while, now if you're going down and buying Starbucks or other stuff, that's gonna go through that 100 very quickly. But if you're buying a bottle of water for 2, 3, 4 RMB or even 1 RMB at the cheapest, people don't like 100 because they have to give you so much change back.
Yeah.
So sometimes it may be hard to use 100 if you're trying to get something of very low value. So if you have a bigger purchase, maybe 20 or 30, no problem. But I found that it's good to have lower denominations. I mean, it's good to have hundreds if you're going to make a big purchase, but you also want the smaller bills because they're more useful. I've had situations where I try to pay the 100, and they're like, no, too big. We don't have enough change. And I'm like, crap, I don't have anything smaller. So it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But with AliPay, you don't need to worry about that. So I always keep money on me, but more likely now it's more of like an emergency in case my phone dies or I can't access my digital money. I can just use the paper currency.
We're gonna need to have like little like charging stations all across the city.
They do. I mean, they do just like here. But the one thing that I find interesting about China is that everybody has a smartphone. Literally everybody has a smartphone. Young, old. It's very comprehensive. I mean, you may not see it, but they probably more than likely they have them. That's something that's different than here. Here, it really younger people, middle-aged people, older people, they all have them, but each category can be a little different. But over there, smartphones are everywhere, so it's much more comprehensively used where they are.
Yeah. Well, that's actually pretty awesome though, because I actually just ran into a weird accident. We had an accident going to a store recently, and the person that hit us, very nice gentleman, like he was actually very helpful. We were trying to exchange information, and by nature, what I do is I take out my phone and it's like, here's my insurance, here's my ID, let me take a photo, right, of everything. For the first time ever, this person did not have a smartphone. He had one of those old flip phones that, well, sir, you can take a photo of my insurance. It's like, no, I gotta write it down. But you got a smartphone, right? It's like, no, I got one of these like old flip phones that when you bought the cover covered up the camera, so you couldn't really take a good picture. It's like, so it's very interesting to see like across the border everybody having a smartphone. I think
it's not 100%, but it's very comprehensive.
It's very close.
You see, I mean, of course, you'll see old people with dumb phones too, but it just depends. But generally, the percentage is much higher over there than it is here for people using smartphones across all age groups, from my observations.
Oh, nice. No, that's really awesome.
And I would say another thing that is interesting over there about how people spend money and versus here is that you rarely see credit cards or a lot of plastic over there. People have them, but you don't see them used a lot. Like, for example, we were talking about Hangzhou, the bigger cities, Hangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing, much more e-commerce, much more online pay platforms. But if you go to the countryside, you go to the second tier, third tier cities, that's going to start to lose prominence, and cash is going to be still more or less king or equivalent. Because like I lived in Hangzhou. Hangzhou is where Alibaba's headquartered. AliPay is everywhere. It's the most dominant place in China because that's where it's headquartered. Now, when I went to Xi'an or central China, which is in Shaanxi province where the Terracotta Army is, Xi'an is the biggest city in that part of China, but it's still not as, I shouldn't say developed, but technologically they've not got to the same level of, I'd say, systematization for that there. So cash was much more predominant there. AliPay and WeChat Pay were still there, but cash was still more prevalent there than in Hangzhou. Oh. So I would say that you don't see a lot of credit. There's not the credit like fervor that we have here. I mean, they have them, they use them, but I've never actually seen it.
Like do you know why they would not like credit versus like using the cash because it's true. Like especially with our college students, right? Everybody wants a credit card because it's money that they can have for now and pay it out later.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's a comprehensive answer for this. I think it really is based on many factors. But I think a lot of factors are, or a lot of points are, one is that parents over there generally support their children much longer into life, and they will pay for a lot more of their expenses to a later age because a lot of times the parents, they're investing in their kids because in the future their kids will help take care of them. I don't want to generalize here, but it's very true in many cases. But I just don't think there's that the the idea of credit has not been so ingrained in their society like it has here, at least on the individual level. It's there, it's used for big purchases. They finance houses, cars, etc., just like here. But for using a credit card to buy groceries and all that, you just don't see that. I'm sure there's that, but I just don't see it, and I don't see the demand for it. People generally use their own money more. They'll use the online pay platforms. They're much more popular because, like AliPay, for example, if you're a Chinese citizen, if you put your money into what's called Ball, you get interest every day, compounded daily off that amount. So if you have, let's say, X amount of money, you can get X amount of money every day from that interest. So it's actually a very good app because you put a lot of money in there, you can get X amount of money every day in interest. So it's much better than anything here in terms of compounding interest. So those apps have a lot of bonuses, and during holidays and special times of the year, they get discounts. Like, for example, during the Chinese New Year, in the past, when I've paid for stuff, I can save like 1 fen, 5 fen, 1 mao. They'll deduct from like every transaction, or you'll have every day, one transaction, you can get a discount. Maybe it's a 1 fen or 1 mao, but still, it's something. Yeah. And also, you can get bonuses, and there's so many other things. You can get coupons. So there's a big incentive to use them because you can save a little money, you can earn money from interest, you can deposit it, and a lot of people I know, they pay all their bills through the app. And it's very convenient. They just bill, done. No writing checks. And that's another thing. I've never seen a single check in China.
Really?
My friends, when I show, like, what is that? It's a check. What is that? They had no idea what it was. So apparently, I've been to China, I've been to Taiwan, I've been to Europe. Never really seen checks there. Apparently, from what I've seen, America is the most check-happy country. But in China, I had a couple people, they were going to go to the U.S., and they were like, what's a check? I had to teach them that in America, you need to write checks sometimes. And it was aliens to them.
Really?
And I'm sure not everybody's that way, but it's not, they don't, the pay platforms and our ideas of how we pay and do things are different.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, like, having the pay platforms kind of abstract the need for a check, because that is what you're kind of writing, right? You're saying, hey, you give me this X amount, and that's the receiver or the sender is gonna accept that. So I can see why it could, since they've kind of skipped the check state, right? Because that's what it used to be. Checks were that transaction, were that card that you would have around.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can't speak for corporate level or more business level transactions, but on the ground, day-to-day transactions, you will never see that. Or at least I have never seen that in the places I've been and in the places I frequent or have frequented when I was there. So, but it's interesting because you can really see, okay, so coming back now, I've kind of taken, okay, this is how they do things financially. This is how we do things financially. And out of that, I'm structuring kind of more of a hybrid way of doing things where, I like the idea of there where credit is not so heavy. You don't see as much the huge amounts of debt, the personal debt. Now, people have a lot of debt in terms of vehicles and property. That's huge over there. But you don't see the same amount of personal debt like you do here, at least from my information and from my experiences there. So that is one thing I like. So, and I really like the online platforms. The only problem with them is the risk of identity theft and fraud.
Oh, really?
I mean, knock on wood, hasn't happened to me or anything. Well, hasn't happened to me over there. But that's why I don't like keeping a lot of money on them. Because they're good, they're safe. But I've had friends who've been hacked. And I know people got hacked, and they don't, the banks and that, they don't have the same type of security and insurance we do here. I mean, your money's going to be safe there generally, but it's just, you have to be a little more careful, and the financial system is, as a foreigner, it's much more, it's harder because you have a lot more restrictions on you.
Yeah.
Whereas in America, you can just go to a bank and open an account, no problem. Over there, they require, okay, passport, all this other information, and you know, you have to be careful because, you know, if they want to take money, well, you have no recourse. Here, you could take legal action, but over there, forget about it. So that's why if you have money over there, you're working over there, studying over there, you know, you can save a lot of money, you can make a lot of money, but you just need to understand, you really need to learn and understand how the financial system works over there to maximize your benefits and avoid any pitfalls.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a financial situation
Exactly.
over there.
Exactly. If you get into a situation like that, it can be quite frightening, you know.
Yeah.
And we can explore this detail later, but as a personal story, but I have a good story about nearly being in this position that was quite scary, involving finances over there.
Hopefully you weren't skipping on a bill.
Well, luckily, it was only temporary. But regardless, it was still a little stressing and
a little scary,
horrifying for a short period of time. Not having the ability to use your money or access your money, to say it politely.
Yeah. No, I'm very curious. So like they use the WeChat platform for payment and the Alibaba. Do they use any of the Apple wallets, the Google Pays over there, or
I'm pretty sure they do use them. I mean, I think there's been a few places where I've seen it, but they are not going to. Here they're dominant, but they're not going to be dominant there because
their companies are there.
Their companies are there, so it's in their best interest to keep their own companies on top, or as have more of a monopoly share of the financial aspects. Now, Google and Apple, they're there. If you have an iPhone, and people use them, but they're not going to match either Alibaba or WeChat Pay anytime soon.
Okay, no, that's fair though.
Yeah, but anyway, you know, have you ever seen a WeChat or an AliPay accepting store, vendor, restaurant here in the United States?
No, that's I've never seen WeChat nor AliPay here. I've seen a lot of companies building their own though. So like what a lot of companies do is they build their own, in their apps they build their own payments section. So you just put in your card and you just open up the McDonald's app and they have a QR code that they scan and that's how they do it. Or you can use GPay or stuff like that. But I've never seen WePay or AliPay. I think that's just because the companies are based in different.
And I would say there's really no need for them over here. Now, I've not seen any personally in the United States, but I have heard that on the West Coast and in some of the bigger cities, you may find them because of the large number of Chinese tourists. So I'm pretty sure that the areas that were more Chinese tourists frequent, I'm sure vendors in those areas would have no objections using those pay platforms because of the benefit that that's going to bring, because that's going to bring them more money. The only problem with that is if they accept those pay platforms, they have to convert it from RMB to dollars, etc. Now, those pay platforms, they can do that, but you know, there's just many factors that go into it. Yeah. But I do think that as more Chinese gain more financial abilities, I think those pay platforms will expand to other countries. Now, I don't think that our pay platforms are going to dominate over there, just like theirs will not dominate over here. But I do see there's going to be a presence of each, because of travel, business, and other things.
Oh, all right. So besides the electronic payments or the platforms, transaction services, MasterCard, Visa, and those, do you guys still have that over there? Is it predominantly, like every single time I see the Olympics, you know, they say Visa is accepted everywhere in the Olympics, so I'm guessing Visa is very predominant over there as well?
That's a very good question, because almost every ATM in China, except MasterCard, Visa, American Express, some of the other large credit card and pay platform companies, not a problem. But the dominant pay platform in China through their debit system is UnionPay. UnionPay is their main. If you get a bank card issue in China, in mainland China, it will be UnionPay. The one I got when I was over there studying was UnionPay. So that card uses UnionPay is probably their equivalent of MasterCard or Visa. It's all the banks use it. It's integrated everywhere. Now, I have found that in the United States now, more and more places are taking UnionPay now. The online pay platforms, they have not made much of a dent yet, but even here in the Midwest, some of the gas stations take it. Walmart takes it.
Yeah.
And some other vendors take it. So because that is what most people use in China, that's going to be, there are more and more companies in the U.S. are taking it. But when most Chinese travel, they will probably get a UnionPay, Visa, or MasterCard credit card. One that can have both platforms. Mm-hmm. Or Bank of China, for example, Bank of China issued Visa card where they can use it abroad. Because if you go to a ATM in the U.S., most ATMs in the U.S. still do not have UnionPay. Now, if you go to Bank of America, Citibank, those big banks, they will accept it. But if you go to the medium-sized banks or the small-town banks, good luck. No. So when you travel, most of the time you really want a Visa or MasterCard, card issued through a Chinese bank, because many places abroad, they still don't take UnionPay. UnionPay is dominant in China, but it's not as international as Visa or MasterCard.
Okay.
Now, it's gaining popularity, and I've seen in the U.S. it's becoming more popular just because of Chinese tourists and people using UnionPay. So I can use my Chinese cards at some places here, but majority places I still cannot.
And I'm assuming that also like international corporations or restaurants such as Denny's, like I know that we went to Denny's and you were able to swipe your UnionPay card over there. You just couldn't. You had to swipe. You couldn't use the chip.
The chip you can only use in mainland China, from my experience. But the swipe function, you can use that on any UnionPay accepting portal.
Yeah, so those type of like restaurants and companies or services are since they are over there in China, they have to.
If any company or entity is going to do business over there, it's only in their best interest to use those. And many foreign companies over there, they are very much locked into WeChat Pay or AliPay, just because a large portion of their customer base is going to be using that to pay them. So it's like they may not like it, but they gotta go with what's going on there.
Exactly.
It's certainly interesting, and when you first arrive, it's definitely a switch, because a lot of people, if you're used to the U.S. dollar, you go over there, you look at this colorful money, oh, Monopoly money or something like that, but you can't think that way because it has value. It may have more or less than the dollar, most of the time less, but still, it's a functioning currency, and it's very important that you take the time and effort to learn what the financial and payment trends are, so you can best maximize your time there and avoid any dangerous or disastrous situations, financially speaking. And in China, because the dollar is high, it has a higher value than the Chinese yuan, your money will go further over there. Right now, it's like $1 is about 6.75, checking today's exchange rate. So for every $100, you have about 675 Chinese yuan. So naturally, you will have an advantage over there. But if you live over there, let's say you're working there teaching English or working for a U.S. company over there, if you work for a U.S. company, you can be paid probably in USD, and you can convert into RMB what you need to live. So you're going to potentially have a much higher standard of living than the locals, just because of the currency difference in what you're paid. But you got to be careful, because if you spend money and you have to constantly think of that exchange rate. But when you live there, you have to think about what's proportional to cost versus proportional to living here. That's very important to you have to take the time to do that. So that's why when I first went there, I really focused on, okay, this is the value of things here. This is what commodities are here versus the States. So I could establish a baseline of, is it expensive, is it not? Because unlike here, I shouldn't say that, as in every country, the cost of things may be different.
Correct.
So a lot of things in the U.S. that are cheap are expensive there, but many things that are expensive here are much cheaper there. It's just, you have to be observant and use common sense and just take the time to research and learn about where you're living in any country, because, let's face it, everyone needs money to survive, and you need to at least know how to manage money, at least on a basic level.
So from your experience, what is the preferred bank that you would say, like, this is the one that I would give my business to?
Well, it really depends, but because all the big banks there are state-run, so unless the government goes down, you're not going to lose the money. There's Bank of China, there's ICBC, Agricultural Bank of China, China CITIC Bank, China Construction Bank. All the banks are pretty good, but I use Bank of China. I'd say from my experience, they're the most foreigner compatible. They have an English website that you can use and go through, and but the service among all of them is going to be about the same. They're all structured the same. It's just they're different banks, but they're all kind of linked to the government the same way. So it really depends, and it also depends on where you live, what banks are more predominant. But I would always bank with the national level banks, not the lower level banks, because they're not going to be designed for foreigners, and it's going to be much more tedious.
Yeah.
So stick with Bank of China, ICBC, China Construction Bank, Agricultural Bank of China, China CITIC Bank, and a few others, just to name a few. Those are the ones that you will want to bank with. Or you may even find Citibank or Citibank, for example. There's a couple locations in Hangzhou for Citibank. You can bank with those, and that way it's an American company, so you can actually have that direct link. So you don't need to convert money. You don't need to do anything, because if you're trying to convert money over there, it can be very, very tedious and difficult and time-consuming. Not so much expensive. When I've exchanged money over there, it's actually much better than it is here. You get a much higher value. Like one time I went to Bank of America to see what they would give me. I thought it was a joke. Comparing to what I converted RMB to dollars over there, it was a joke what they gave me here versus what they gave me there. The fee, the commission, the fee, and the exchange rate over there was almost the same, as literally just like 1 cent less than the actual value of the money to money on that day. Whereas at Bank of America, I would have lost 10 times more. Or approximately. So there's no comparison. So my suggestion is, don't convert the money here. You're gonna get screwed over. They're gonna throw fees at you left and right. Over there, they're gonna just throw you the exchange rate, a little difference, a little less than the exchange rate is in that day, and a slight fee, but it's almost nothing. Let's say you convert $500, you're probably going to pay less than $10 in fees over there. Whereas here, you're going to probably pay $50 to $100 maybe, depending on what services you want, roughly speaking. I'm not an expert on the fees and rates, but this is just from my experience. So, like I said, when I went to Bank of America, it was a joke. I'm like, are you serious? It was almost insulting.
Yeah.
And I remember I told them, well, I could do this in China. And they were like, what? They were like, how is that possible? I'm like, they don't charge all the fees like we do here.
Yeah, man, they're gonna try to charge you as much, because those conversions, at least from the U.S. standpoint, I guess they're not as easy.
Well, and I don't think it's a very common occurrence, especially in the Midwest here. Now, if you're in Chicago, New York, LA, I'm sure it's very common. But in this part of the country, it's not going to be the most common thing, just because of demographics and geography.
That's a very valid point. Yeah.
But of course, every city in the U.S. or every city is going to have it. It just depends on what the foreign population or what the population of other places is, what numbers are.
Population
the
of the institution.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you for listening to the first
episode.
So remember, when traveling to China, MasterCard or Visa, always a good thing. If you want an opener bank, possibly Bank of China. And we will see you next time.
See you next time, and stay tuned for our next episode.